Thanks for joining us here today. I've been pretty lucky. I've been part of the journey with you for a little bit of time now. I think we've joked around about we're going to do a podcast together, so maybe today is going to be a bit of our pilot session for everyone. Let's dive right in. The founder, CEO of Deteqt. You've had a long-standing fascination with magnetic fields well before the business even started. So, where did this fascination start? What's been this personal journey and that's evolved now into this ambitious vision you have for what the business is?
Okay, thanks, Alex. We're recording this, so this is our first trial podcast. It's Rabeau and Deteqt. Those are both problematic words, I've found out. Okay, so in terms of magnetic fields, I've been thinking about this question, and I haven't really had a lifelong passion for magnetic fields. That would be a little bit weird, I felt. But so the magnetic field interest and passion has really come fairly recently, but it stems from what I do have a passion about is science and engineering, and investigating and learning new things, and I've always been like that. And so I did my PhD growing diamond back in the early 2000s, actually making diamond in a lab. And I came to Australia in 2003 and quickly got into very early stages of quantum technology emerging in Australia. It was an amazing time, and it's been an amazing time. And the work I was doing was, what could you do quantum with diamonds? And you can isolate atoms in diamonds that are quantum objects, and you can actually measure magnetic fields with them. So that's something that I've carried through all through that period. And how it's got us to where we are today in Deteqt is we're measuring magnetic fields with I don't know if there was a slide that was going to go up, but basically with these tiny diamonds that can measure magnetic fields all around us. I want to also, just because we're talking about quantum sensing, and I recognize that a lot of people have heard the word quantum computing, quantum sensing. I think it's worthwhile just to anchor this conversation in stating that quantum is not valuable in its own right. It's not just saying, stamping a quantum on it and it's going to get some investment. Though that probably actually works sometimes, but the investors are getting smarter. And really what this is about, with a quantum object like the diamond that we're using, you can get much higher sensitivity and you can get much better stability. And with those two things, if you have a sensor that can do those two things, all of a sudden there's so many more opportunities to do better measurements, whether that's in the field or in the human body. So this is kind of a new world. If we're engineering, now the image is there, but it's like if we're engineering things that can be more sensitive and higher stability, all of a sudden there's new things open up, and that's what really excites me.
Wow. It's interesting for me because, magnetic fields, they are around us all the time, and you're kind of unlocking this new way for us to start sensing and kind of seeing these new fields around us. I guess with some of these phenomenons, how have you seen some of these linkages with nature and how these phenomenons exist? And now kind of, starting from nature, now we look to industries. What are some of these new kind of industries that can really benefit from these technologies? You've already touched on a few, but can you kind of dive in a little bit, what will the future be for, say, mining, for health, for, advanced industry when this technology is kind of able to be out in market?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, I thought about this one, and it sort of evolved. But there's just the example of a compass. When you hold a compass flat in your hand, it's magnetized, and it basically aligns with the magnetic field, the big, strong magnetic field of Earth, north and south. It's a invaluable, very simple magnetometer in a sense. It's pointing the direction of the northern hemisphere. What we're doing is think about orders of magnitude more sensitivity and being able to measure the magnetic changes in that field. So actually, that field looks like it's a straight line with a compass needle, but it's measuring a big giant thing, like a big signal, right? So, but actually on a granular level, there's lots of wobbles and changes, and you can think of that as a map underground. I mean, literally like a road map of the Earth that's made out of magnetic fields. So I'll come back to that in a second. But what we're doing in the measurements that we're able to do with our device are many thousands of times more sensitive than that. Now, what has been really revelatory for me in the last few years is learning and understanding nature, and for example, these road maps under the ground of magnetic domains, that animals, birds, turtles can essentially imprint these subtle changes. And turtles in particular are fascinating. We don't really fully understand how this works, but can imprint where they're hatched and then navigate to the other side of the world and then find their way back to the same location. So they're not just pointing an arrow north or south, they're remembering and imprinting and finding their way. And this is one of the areas that we're trying to, in some ways, replicate with navigation. And why is that important? Why would we use a map of magnetic fields instead of just satellites and GPS? And that is the big challenge, the big problem that sort of got us to where we are. And just to explain that a little bit further is that we use GPS routinely on our phones. Everyone uses it. We're highly dependent on it, and that's a very fragile relationship because, as we see, and it's in the mainstream media, satellites can be shut down. They can be jammed, and they will be jammed. Defense expects it to happen. Ukraine has no GPS signal, and there's no navigation with satellite. So there's all these different ways to navigate, either just by using visual or inertial navigation. So there's a lot of new technology being pressured to be developed. Magnetic field sensing and magnetic navigation using maps, it could replace GPS because it's the same thing. You're positioning yourself on a grid, right? So I've kind of meandered there, but that's just one example. Let me throw in another one and highlight perhaps one of the advantages of the sensor that we have. It's kind of, all it is a magnetometer, a vector magnetometer. So it's measuring that signal very stably. And we're measuring things underground or wherever they might be in the human body. So the luxury we have is that the application space that we can go into is kind of open. I mean, so we're funded by Defense to do the navigation project, and we have some partners in that space, and we're piloting. We're also working very closely with a company called Fleet Space, based in Adelaide. Many of you would know. Some revolutionary new technology linking signal sensing to satellites, and we're working with them to pilot our sensor to measure critical minerals underground and link that to satellites. And then there's also further opportunities in the medical space and beyond.
Wow, so it really is a technology that can be applied in so many different ways. I really love the idea. We can be, going through the tunnel in the future and we lose our GPS. And I don't know if anyone's been on the M8 recently. You kind of get stuck with, oh shit, which is my exit, trying to figure that out. And now there's an opportunity we can be more like turtles and know exactly where we need to go, irrespective of what's happening around us. I liked how you talked to that linkage to GPS, where there was a lot of technology that enabled, GPS to come to market, from, atomic clock to satellite constellations. So, you've touched on it a little bit already, but what is it about right now that's really enabled what you're doing, this type of, vector magnetometer, if I got it right, to be able to be developed and be on its way to market?
There's a number of things. So one of them is that quantum science and technology has advanced from those early 2000s when I arrived, and lots of experimental ideas, lots of theoretical ideas. So there's been enormous advancement in the field as a whole to get us to better understand, get us to a stage where we better understand and can measure these quantum systems. So that's an advancement that's happened. with respect to our technology itself, it wasn't very long ago, and 5+ years ago, that our device was on a lab bench and multiple different components. And so I want to just, actually, the reason I wore this jacket is so that I could do this. Here's the device. This is what you see on the screen. And this is the culmination of so many years of work that's been done on this device. And again, I can refer to the slide there, but there's a tiny CMOS chip, a semiconductor chip like you have in your phone or computer. And on top of that is a diamond chip, the quantum. And why this is exciting is because there's so much research and development that's gone into this. And we received funding in 2020 from the Defense Innovation Network and the Office of the Chief Scientist to actually do some design and develop a CMOS chip. And I would call out here my co-founder, Omid Kaveh, who's not here, but it was him and I coming together and having a conversation and referring to the literature. He's a CMOS semiconductor guy, right? Like he's a professor at the University of Sydney. I'm the diamond quantum person. And I love this idea of, and this is what I'm running with. It's like we're bringing quantum to the world. We're making quantum mainstream by connecting it with these semiconductor superhighway. I mean, so back to your question, this combination is solving one of the biggest challenges for quantum technology to move forward, and that is building them and scaling them. And this is why this is so exciting, because this is our first prototype. We've been in existence for a year now. This is our first prototype that we're gonna have finished at the end of September. It's the kind of prototype that I call a boardroom prototype, and it won't work in the field. I can see here at times, sorry. But really leveraging the semiconductor superhighway and scaling down. So this is going to be a chip scale device, and we're going to release it much more widely, thinking of it on every phone or in every car.
I love it. Putting quantum on the semiconductor highway. I think there's a new tagline being developed there. Just looking back, and even in the last 12 months, you've been able to, go and hire a team, some really important strategic hires. You've built your first lab, the defense contract that you've secured, the initial funding that you've received with your first investors, you're going out to raise once again. So much is happening. So really, I want to thank you for sharing your journey with us so far, and giving everyone a little window into the time in Deteqt. Please make sure you find Jim and his team in the break. Talk to him about his next raise, because I think there's a lot more to happen still to jump on that semiconductor highway.
Alex was only able to get through like 3 out of the 6 questions, so I'm sorry. But I want to call out colleagues who are here, Rupal and David, who have been part of this team building, and it's been fantastic, and your support as well through the Cicada program. It's been awesome. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.